Good evening. I'm DEREKH Chamblee. Google DEREKCHAMBLEE. It's April 19th, 2016. And what you're seeing in front of you is distributed by Hillsborough County. It's the Hillsborough County evacuation zones and shelters. It's not readily available. Best way to get it, go to the county administrator's office on the 26th floor of the Hillsborough County Center. I've pursued this particular map for 7 years, and it's virtually the same map. It hasn't changed in 7 years. In fact, when I got this one this year, they said it was the same map that they had last year and the same plan. And after years of study, tonight I wanted to share with you a citizen emergency plan to prepare for a potential hurricane hitting Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay region. I've been in front of the county commissioners, and the time historically for storms that have hit Tampa, Hillsborough County, Tampa Bay region, coming up through the Bay, the storms have hit on the 23rd of September and the 23rd of October. And that time of year, for the most part, any storm that gets into the Gulf of Mexico will end up making landfall on the west coast of Florida. That time of year, a depression that forms in the western Caribbean and comes up along Nicaragua and the Yucatan Peninsula and gets into the Gulf of Mexico, that time of year is what we want you to focus on. Right around September 1st, be prepared. No later than September 1st with your plan, for your family, for your friends, co-workers. And the 10th of September is a time to focus on the Western Caribbean. Approximately 82 degrees longitude and 12 degrees latitude for a depression to form. You'll have approximately 10 days to work with, and a storm that forms there in the Western Caribbean comes up along Nicaragua, as I was saying, and it meander along Central America there, and then come up through past over the Yucatan and re-strengthen in the Gulf of Mexico. And that's the kind of storm, that time of year, from September 10th to October 23rd, to watch for. And this is a map of the evacuation zones. The colored areas, the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, represent elevations. And they represent where storms surge from the winds pushing the water of the bay, where those surges would end up. Basically, these are the absolute evacuation zones. According to the history books, Tampa's never been hit by a category storm, even before they were giving them categories. At the very most, Tampa was hit by a high-end tropical storm with winds of probably 70, 75 miles an hour with gusts over that. So this particular hurricane could get into the Gulf and really strengthen to become, I nickname it the Gulf of Mexico monster, where the outer bands of the hurricane affect the entire Gulf community, from western Florida to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. Anyway, at that time of year, they don't curve toward Galveston or Houston or New Orleans, or even go straight up necessarily to the panhandle of Florida. They curve into the west coast of Florida. And so now we're looking at the bay here in a direction that perhaps the hurricane would come if it came through the Sunshine Skyway area and came up the bay here. You'd be looking at the bay, the shores here from this direction. These lines that are drawn here represent the direction of perhaps the storm surge. The circles represent key intersections that are either in absolute evacuation zones. For instance, this one right here. This is Apollo Beach, and the intersection is State Road 672, Big Bend Road, and State Road 41. Now, State Road 41 coming up here through Apollo Beach there it's on absolute evacuation level, elevation. And at any rate, these circles represent key intersections that have been identified as potential problems to keep the roads open once the rain starts and the winds pick up. The squares represent areas that contain the area's hospitals. These squares here, there's a hospital here. Actually, that's a blue shelter. The hospital's right over here in this square. This hospital is just north of Hillsborough and south of Waters here. And this square here contains 3 hospitals. Another one closer to the river here, just above Martin Luther King, and another one right on Martin Luther King. The one above Martin Luther King is on Dale Mabry and Martin Luther King. At any rate, those are areas that will need to secure for those in the aftermath, search and rescue, that will need hospitalization and first aid. At any rate, to back up a little bit here, according to the instructions in this hurricane evacuation plan brochure, the emergency would be called 36 hours before the headwinds come, and that's not going to be enough time. That's not going to be enough time for people to get their cars on the road and evacuate. That's the problem. And over, I've been to city council and the county commissioners and in the county center up to the county administrator's office and asked them for their meeting minutes over the years in the off season when the emergency circle that makes these kinds of decisions meets. How have they improved their evacuation plan? How have they, what have they come up with? Where are the meeting minutes? Well, they told me 7 years ago there were no meeting minutes. And I guess it was humorous to them. They said, but if we find them, we'll put them out in the bookcase in the reception area, and we'll call it the Book of DEREKH. So here you have it. This is a cyber book of DEREKH. Reference the Old Testament Theological Dictionary, the Old Testament. Reference the name DEREKH. It means the way, the road, the highway, and this is the way out of Tampa Bay. The problems when the headwinds reach 50 miles an hour, the gusts, for instance, the first bridge to be shut down will be the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. It's right down here. It's off this map, Pinellas County, St. Petersburg. And then when the water whips up, the Gandy Bridge will be shut down, and the Courtney Campbell Bridge will be shut down. And after a point, some point, the Interstate 275 Howard Franklin will be shut down. Now, the complication for those that live in Pinellas County, St. Petersburg and Pinellas County and Clearwater, the complication for them is great because now this is a Rand McNally map, Road Atlas 2016. The hurricane evacuation map here for Hillsborough County, as I said before, it must be pretty old. The same map that they were distributing 7 years ago, but the map itself, when you examine it, it does not label Harbor Island, and the map may be from the 80s, a time when Harbor Island wasn't even built. And the other storms that hit Tampa, there was no Tampa General Hospital on Davis Island. So this might be a little difficult to see here. At any rate, the Sunshine Skyway Bridge would be the first bridge shut down. And of course, that comes down into Manatee County and Sarasota County. And that's not an escape route anyway for those in Sarasota County and Manatee County to escape north to Pinellas County, because virtually what we've discovered is there's going to be no escape really from Pinellas County if people delay in terms of getting on the bridges and beginning to move across the state through the interstates, 275 to I-75, Interstate 4 to I-95. These interstates are the major arteries out of the entire peninsula of Florida, basically. And they cannot handle the amount of traffic that would occur if everyone waited till the last minute to evacuate. Things go wrong on the road, cars run out of gas, there are accidents, roads begin to be closed down and traffic gets backed up. Even on a good day, if there's an accident somewhere along the Howard Franklin or somewhere east past the Malfunction Junction, even on a good day, you know these things, that traffic can back up all the way from Pinellas County all the way to nearly Plant City. At any rate, the particular problem of Pinellas County is that once the Sunshine Skyway Bridge closes down and the Gandy, the Howard Franklin, and the Courtney Campbell bridges close, there's only one precious land route, actually two land routes out of Pinellas County. One is alternate 19, which runs north. You can see this here. Alternate 19, which runs north, and 19, and alternate 19, but they're squeezed by Lake Tarpon. They're squeezed by Lake Tarpon here on the east, and on the west, the Gulf of Mexico. It's a very narrow escape there, and on a good day, everybody knows over in Pinellas County, over in St. Pete, at 19, the traffic is very, very difficult, very, very difficult on a good day. So the only other land route, interestingly enough, comes down Tampa Road and connects with Hillsborough Avenue, which runs, it's actually State Road 580. Hillsborough Avenue runs from northwest to southeast, and then it straightens out and goes from west to east. Hillsborough Avenue is basically the only other land route out. And you'll notice here it's all under absolute evacuation. It's a red zone there. It's not going to take very long for it to be underwater. People that lived in Tampa last year, from July 15th to September 1st when the rains came, you know that Kennedy Boulevard, for instance, was shut down. A lot of areas in South Tampa were flooded, and that was continual rains, was not a hurricane. And so this escape route from Pinellas County along the shore here of the bay is not real viable. And then once they straighten out and go directly east on Hillsborough, they've got a ways to go to get onto the interstate. So in any kind of evacuation, the people in Pinellas County are in a very, very difficult situation if they wait too long to get out. And all of this creates a domino effect on the roads. Pinellas County and the inhabitants of Pinellas County coming across the bridges and the land routes into Hillsborough County, and then in Hillsborough County and the residents in Hillsborough County, along with the residents in Pinellas County, all proceeding to the middle part of Florida And then that's a big problem. It's a big problem for Polk County. It's a big problem for Orange County, Orlando, and all the way here we've got through Lakeland, past Winter Haven, in on I-4 into the Orlando Metro. All of here, this becomes a domino effect on the road. All these counties are impacted. And the side country roads that are connecting with the interstates and the larger state roads, the small country roads are going to be very, very difficult to sustain a lot of vehicle traffic. Anyway, this problem continues, a domino kind of problem all the way up through Ocala, Gainesville, up I-75, I-4 as it connects to I-95 through Jacksonville into Georgia. It's problems all the way up to Georgia. And all of these counties need to be involved in any kind of evacuation from the Tampa Bay region. And so the conclusion is also another problem with this plan here is that all of the shelters are schools. They're elementary schools, the middle schools, and the senior high schools in Hillsborough County. They have not changed the list of shelters. It's been the same list, as I said, 7 years, it's the same list. And there would not be enough room to evacuate even all the people in Hillsborough County themselves. And I've eliminated the shelters one by one because of their particular location in terms of storm surge, flooding, and that includes the ones along the Hillsborough River corridor, and even the ones that are in this area here, which is New Tampa. New Tampa is built right in the midst of a lot of water, swampy areas, and these roads must be kept open, but really the way it looks is that the entire Hillsborough County would need to evacuate. So if the evacuation is not called, timely, fast, because it would seem once you evacuate the hospitals, the elderly, the people in the health care facilities, the women, the children, this takes time. Now, historically, the MacDill Air Force Base, which is also the location of Homeland Security and the Central Command over all the wars overseas, in places like Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and Syria, whatnot. They begin their evacuations, moving their heavy equipment. Over the years that I've observed, they begin 7 days before anything comes out of the from the meteorologists, from the Hurricane Center. They begin moving things. So, this is MacDill Air Force Base is probably would be underwater, and most of South Tampa here underwater. As it comes up, as you come up here to Kennedy, and escape routes through downtown, not a very good idea. The residents downtown have never been through an evacuation, probably in Channelside downtown and Ybor City area where the new apartment buildings and condos have been built. The last evacuation that we know of was 2004, Hurricane Charlie, as it came up the west coast, strengthened to a Category 5, and then hooked into the Punta Gorda, the harbor there at Port Charlotte. Had it come a little further north and hooked into the bay through the Sunshine Skyway, we would have been looking at this kind of disaster. Right now, this is a recipe for disaster. And so, in essence, first of all, we're letting the citizens know they need a better plan. Not 3 days of food and water, for instance, perhaps 30 days of non-perishable food to feed your family and have access to the aftermath of the storm. So the first conclusion that there's no way to evacuate approximately 3 million people that are impacted here. There's no way to do it. If that's the case, then a lot of people are going to be left behind. Those that fly out and get booking on a flight, that's going to be difficult because the tourists. We have that time of year, many tourists here, and students coming back to school, for instance, and the only other ways out, of course, by sea, by water. That's not really an option once the Gulf starts churning up. And so that leaves the roads, the interstates. And when the emergency evacuation is called, basically they're going to tell you to stay put because you cannot take the car on the road. Only authorized trucks, vehicles will be authorized to be on the road as long as they keep them open. At the point at which a couple of million people, several million people begin to evacuate across the state and north on the interstate and whatnot, the roads, it could take 3 days, 5 days just to get out of the state of Florida. So rather than go through the storm out on the road with cars will not be allowed on the road. The bridges will be shut down, and of course, we saw that Pinellas County is really in trouble here. And these bridges were shut down. As far as Hillsborough County, all of the areas that are colored on this map basically would be slated to be underwater. Like a shallow pan of water when you shake it. The water splashes, and that's the kind of unusual storm surge that can occur here in this very this special place, Tampa Bay. It's like no other place in the world. In fact, several months ago there was an article about some study that had been done at Tampa Bay region that was rated something in the top 3 or number 1 as far as potential disaster hazard. Now, I want to point this area out here, this square right here, is in essence Tampa Heights, Seminole Heights, Silver Springs, all the way to East Lake, and it's Belmont Heights. It's the Heights because it's higher elevation. However, this area here, higher elevation, may not flood, or the water may recede there rapidly, but it's surrounded by water. The Hillsborough River on the west, which curves and forms the northern boundary, connects with the East Canal, which comes down, and it connects with Palm River, and then comes to where the Ybor Port is there, and wraps around Channel side and meets, the Hillsborough River there at its mouth. I've counted at least 30 bridges around this square here. 30 bridges in and out. 30 bridges. Those bridges will be shut down unless you live in that area or you're bringing relief into there or authorized to go into that area. Those bridges early on will be shut down. There will be vehicle checks, that type of thing. In essence, when an emergency evacuation is called, it's martial law. It's martial law. But of particular interest are the neighborhoods along the water, the neighborhoods that in the color-coded areas that are absolute evacuation zones. Really, how are people going to protect their property? We've advised the neighborhood watch groups to identify neighbors that they know that have permits to carry their firearms and have them organized with the authorities in the aftermath to make sure the property is not looted and whatnot. At any rate, another problem is insurance. After Hurricane Andrew, people were on their property for over a month with firearms, guarding it, waiting for the insurance inspectors for their claims. So in essence, it's the property values in the areas that are absolute evacuation zones. Those are very, very high property values there. At any rate, and I'm reasonably sure that the citizens of Hillsborough County are not going to want to be crowded in these few schools that have been identified as shelters. The shelters really must be for volunteers, for the authorities, for workmen and whatnot, and those that are going to be involved in the aftermath search and rescue, and with space so that when someone is rescued, they can be taken to these key points, the shelter. At any rate, the fallback position really is Plant City here. The potential of this storm surge, and I call on the meteorologists, I call on them to, there have been some simulation of what would happen with the hurricane coming through. But it seems to me that the storm surge is going to go way, way beyond these colored areas. And one area of particular interest, when I looked at the 1882 map here in the John F. Germany Library, on the second floor of the annex, this was a river here in Gibsonton. This was a river here that went all the way through what is now Bloomingdale. Half of Bloomingdale is built on riverbed. Half of Bloomingdale here is built on riverbed, and this squiggly line represents how the river's going to come back. That's all going to be flooded. It's going to return to the way it was in 1882. Also, there are marshy areas. These lines in here are really drawn around to show really all the county is at risk. And of course the above ground waters, the lakes and whatnot. And everybody knows around the Hillsborough River corridor, flooding occurs frequently. And as you get to the eastern part of Tampa, in this area here, this is essentially where you see purple. That's going to be underwater. The rivers, the lakes will be expanded, the marshy areas, and so keeping the interstates open is going to be very, very difficult to support the amount of traffic. And really, since 1960, the state of Florida has doubled in population, and most probably, in the aftermath of a storm like this, we're going to rethink about doing all this building along the coast, along the water areas. So the fallback position really is Plant City, and other positions here that the authorities and the workers and the volunteers will need to hold down for once the storm is passed, to basically battle their way back, opening roads up and whatnot, battling their way back with relief help in the search and rescue. If you wait too long and you cannot exit by automobile, car, your family truck, your cars, we're advising people to seek out and the city government and county government to make available every parking garage, and the private sector, the companies, every parking garage, so that you can get a space set aside so that you can park your car. And of course, it could still get damaged. At any rate, you will not be able to exit by automobile. And the federal government, FEMA, once the governor calls for federal assistance, many times FEMA does not show up for seven days. And after Hurricane Andrew, for instance, there were staging areas where there were 3,000, 5,000 people in line for bottled water and GI rations, fighting over that. And it's just a recipe for disaster here. But the thing tonight is that study your own family plan. For over 7 years, I've urged the ministers of the churches to get storage spaces and store up food for their congregation that could last up to 30 days. And I would advise that also for a single family, to get a storage space that's somewhere into the state there, or up toward Georgia, somewhere beyond Plant City, somewhere out of Hillsborough County, that you can get access to in the aftermath, and you'll have food. And so, and also a safety deposit box for valuables. Those that are gun owners and have weapons that have permits and whatnot, you will be responsible for not letting those firearms fall into the wrong hands there. At any rate, storage spaces up in this square right here, surrounded by the bridges, it seemed to me before would be a great place to store food. A lot of the major markets, Publix, Winn-Dixie and whatnot, a lot of their food warehouses are in absolute evacuation zones. For instance, this Walmart on Kennedy, just over the Kennedy Bridge here on West Kennedy here, this Walmart here, superstore, supermarket, you won't even have access to it. Another thing that is a concern are the workers. If an emergency is not called until the last moment, and the workers are held at work, will they lose their jobs if they leave early before the actual evacuation is called? That's really a concern. And Also, if you pick up the Heartline Bus Hurricane Evacuation Route brochure, it's just totally unacceptable. These bus routes are just not going to be operative very long. And where will you be evacuated by Heartline Bus? Where will you go? Where will you be evacuated to? Really, the Heartline buses must, and every available bus must take people out by bus in the early stages, and connect with the county buses from other counties and whatnot, and keep moving along in the state all the way to Georgia. That's it for now. Call your city council person, figure out your own plan, talk to your employer. If you're a government worker working for the city or the county, ask them exactly what the plan is, if you'll be required to stay back and work and in a search and rescue kind of operation. And another thing too about the workers, there's so much construction going on the interstates and the county roads and the state roads that it would take probably 48 hours just to clear the barriers and clear the because these become projectiles in high winds, and that's another problem with the roads right now, and all the construction sites and whatnot. So it looks like we'll need to contact our government officials and get some sort of answers from them. And we're going to need to mobilize and not wait on them. And we're going to need the private sector. We're going to need every cab driver, every tow company, for instance. And we're going to need to identify buildings that may be used, private buildings that may be used as shelters, because the shelter situation is totally unacceptable. This is DEREKH Chamblee, and I hope that this is helpful to you tonight. And stay tuned. This is tomorrow's news. Today. Google ENTELINTER, ENTELINTER, one word. Google NIXPIXNEXPREZ. And I'm DEREKH Chamblee, DEREKCHAMBLED. And this is my presentation of a citizen's emergency in preparation for a coming hurricane. Thank you very much.